Good afternoon and namaskar. Thank you very much for having me on this program, the Pondi Lit Fest 2020, and giving me an opportunity to speak to all of you about my book on narratives. I remember September 2019 in Puducherry when I had the occasion to be a participant in the Lit Fest that year, where I made a lot of good friends, met wonderful people, and I was hoping that they would call me again for another Lit Fest. At that time, I was a one-book author, having written The Unending Game, and the second book was on the way. So I am now showing 100% improvement. My second book is out and is available for those who are interested. So it's good to be back here, although in a different format, and I must confess I'm not very good at this kind of a thing. However, I'll do what I can to express myself to the best, and I hope you will be able to listen in as much as you want to. There's something that I wanted to say even before I talk about my new book, The Ultimate Goal. Subconsciously, in our subconscious or unconsciously, in life, narratives get built into you by your surroundings. You have a rich uncle in the family. He's the most successful man, and therefore the wisest man, and everybody looks up to him, and his word is gospel. So that's how it goes. Well, I joined school, perhaps I was one of the first few Indians to go to school in independent India. I mean, 49 I started school, 1949, and we were not even a republic at that stage. And so the atmosphere at the school, the teaching at school, fortunately they didn't teach us history at school. I would say fortunately, because that time history was really history as was written by the British. Not that we have done fantastically better in how we've written history in the last 70 years about ourselves, but that's another matter. And that's something we have to rectify. So school was totally oriented towards the British systems. Our teachers were Irish, mostly at the higher level, and we learned no history. We did a bit of geography. Geography also included Mohenjo-daro, and Mohenjo-daro meant that it was, Mortimer Wheeler saying that it was an Aryan invasion that finished Mohenjo-daro, which is absurd. No one believed then, although there were writers who carried on for long, but that is how it is. And strangely enough, let me stray a bit, the Pakistanis, I've seen Pakistanis now talk about Naya Pakistan, and they say that Takshashila, they go back to Takshashila. I mean, even before Islam came to Pakistan or India, and they're talking about that being their heritage. So there is an anomaly in all this kind of narrative building. So at school, we were taught, it was not consciously driven, but it was there that the Englishman is superior because he ruled over us, and he was able to rule over us because he was superior, and so on and so forth. No one said it, but that was the message. College was a little different. We became a little more aware. I went to college in the 60s when we first had the China War, then we had the Pakistan War, and soon after, a few years after I joined the civil service, we had 1971, the conflict. It was, the early days were fun at college, as college always is. It was James Bond and Elvis Presley. And no one really bothered too much about Cold War or what the Russians were doing or what the Americans were doing. It was there at the background that things were happening. And of course, everyone was upset about, angry about 1962, both with our own government and with the Chinese. But it wasn't a matter of life and death. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis at that time. It came and went. And the two superpowers showed their muscle, and one of them, the Soviets, retreated. So then once you got into service, and once I got into joined the research and analysis wing, things began to look a little different. We began to probe a little more, wanted to find out what's the real story, why is it being said like this and done something, and something else is being done. So that's when we understood that, say something, you mean something else, you do something else. My new book, therefore, is about the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal of any power is for command and dominance, control and dominance. The rest is all make-believe. I recall that soon after 1945, though, when the war was over, George Kennan, the great Cold War strategist of the Americans and a diplomat, he said that America controlled 50% of the world's wealth, and that it had only 6.3% of the population. Therefore, it was necessary or desirable for the Americans to maintain this disparity. This difference must be maintained. And for that, it was all about commanding and controlling and dominating, and you could forget human rights, you could forget democracies, it didn't matter. So, thereafter we saw that in the 60s, the Cold War time, the 70s, the United States was the champion of democracy, but it had 60 odd global dictators in their camp fighting for democracy in the Soviet Union. Can you see the irony of it? That here is a champion of democracy who's got all these dictators and people who violate human rights in their own countries, championing the cause of democracy in the Soviet Union. And the classic thing is, you saw that the Americans used the Mujahideen. In fact, they created this whole system to fight the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. And President Reagan, when he met the Mujahideen in his Oval Office, he called them he equated them to the founding fathers of the United States. So, you can change your narrative as you want to, as the need arises. There is the overall narrative of superiority. And history and narratives are written by the victors and the powerful and the rich. We, the others, don't get a chance in sideways or anyway to get your voice heard. If you look at how how the media functions in the West. Today, the United States, the West have the strongest media abilities in the world. All of it, the Reuters, CNN, AFP, CBS, all controlled in the West. And I think nine corporations, private corporations, own 90% of the media in the United States. And 5 billionaires own a majority of media in the UK. So we may call it free press, but it is free press of a certain category, who determine what they will say and how they will say. And my contention, my argument is that however strong a nation may be, however rich that nation may be, however advanced technologically it may be, unless it is able to sell its story, to get its narrative right, it won't succeed. Take the example of the United States. It lost the 1975, it had to vacate Vietnam. The vision always equated is of those Vietnamese hanging on to the fleeing helicopter as the last Americans left. But the power of the media is so strong, the power of the narrative is so strong, that the imagery of the United States as the strongest power on earth has not taken a beating. There may be little doubts about limitations of military power, but it still is the go-to country for every possible reason, rightly or wrongly. Its military power, yet its military power, its economic power, its technological process capabilities did not lead to success in Afghanistan or Iraq. Therefore, unless you have a narrative that is matching your needs, you cannot succeed. And narratives are not necessarily based on truths. They're not based on, they can be half-truths, they can be outright lies. In Iraq, the story was that Saddam Hussein had the WMDs and Al-Qaeda. None of it was true. Everybody knew it wasn't true. Yet, that was the story that was sold. And rightly or wrongly, willingly or unwillingly, countries trooped along with that story. We are taught of democracy. Yet, democracy is not the goal. Democracy is a slogan. Human rights are a slogan that are used. Till 1990, till the Soviet Union was in opposition to the United States, we didn't hear too much about human rights violations in many countries. Once that was over, once Soviet Union fell, then suddenly they discovered human rights as an issue for intervention in the third world, shall we say. So we had, when we were fighting our battles against vicious terrorism in Kashmir in the 90s, we were being hauled up for human rights violations. Not Pakistan for violating Indian territory or for supporting or indulging in terrorism in India. When George Bush declared in September 2001 that they're going to fight a global war on terror, what he said was, we will fight against global war on terror against terrorists who have global reach. So some of us were very happy that now the United States is going to help us fight Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish Muhammad. Were wrong. He said with global reach. Now neither Lashkar nor Jaish-e-Muhammad had that, nor did the Taliban. The only one he meant was Al-Qaeda. They were not going to fight any other conflict for us. So we have to be aware of what their goals are. We have to be aware of where we're going to go. Narratives are about nobility of purpose, about largeness of heart, generosities, but that's the cover story. The narrative is different. It's how to control me, how to control anybody else. Now it doesn't mean that they all sit down together and make, okay, today's story is going to be like this. No, it's more refined, it's more long term, it's more strategic. It's done in a coordinated but not coordinated way. After all, you have very powerful organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission, where somebody is a member or invited to be a member, and it's a conglomeration of the rich, the powerful, the influential. It can include writers, journalists, intelligence officers, bureaucrats, State Department, Pentagon, or British counterparts in the Trilateral, and politicians, former presidents, former state secretaries, or people like Kissinger and Brzezinski and all. They were all members of these powerful organizations that sort of lay down strategies and work out stories. And there's another thing in the United States which makes this thing very easy. It's the revolving door where a congressman can be a member of or heading a corporate company, come to a think tank, go back to the State Department, and rotating around. So the same people keep doing the rounds and are in control in one way or the other. We don't have that. We don't have anything like the Council on Foreign Relations, and something like that is needed if you want to be somewhere, because the CFR is alternatively called the Second State Department, or it is also called Wall Street think tank, because huge corporate interests are involved in all this. So that's how we the world is run through narratives backing the other weapons, as I might call it, of armed might and technological prowess and economic strength. So these determine your abilities to control. And any country that wishes to be somewhere If we want to be a $5 trillion economy, if we want to be a $10 trillion economy, we have to start thinking of our own story. What are we? Who are we? And how do we tell this story? Do we have the means to do it? Right now we don't. We have nothing like Reuters, we have nothing like CNN, we have nothing of that sort. We don't. Our newspapers don't even have representation in our neighborhood. They don't even have in the major capitals. So how are we going to sell our story? Instead, we have people who give stories in foreign newspapers from here, which are not very happy stories. So the narrative gets reversed by us. You remember when Mrs. Kennedy came visiting and we showed her the proudly exhibited snake charmer. Or this is something which the BBC had been doing for a long time after independence, that India was a land of Taj Mahal, land of snake charmers, beggars on the street, and snake charmers. We are all the time recultivating that image. A foreigner once told me, I've seen India, I've seen Taj Mahal and there's nothing else to see. So is this the impression they had about us? Things are looking different, yes, but we still have what I might call a bad to lukewarm press outside against us. Maybe it's a hangover of the Cold War, because in the Cold War days we were seen on the other side of the fence, and gone were the days when Wilbur Arndt or Toynbee or A.L. Basham would write great stories about India. Now it was the time to tell them these fellows living in a socialist world are almost lackeys of the Soviet Union, while Mao would call us lackeys of capitalists. So we were nowhere. We have to find our own place. We have to find our own narrative. We have to tell the world about our history, of what we were, what we are, or what we will be. We have to do it our way. We have to do it quickly. We have to do it fast. I'm sure there is a beginning, because just take this year that's gone by, the number of phenomenal books that have come out by Indians about India and about India's relations with other countries is an encouraging sign that we are beginning to have our own views on the world, and we are not scared to express them. That is the important thing. We've always had this tendency of taking this business of treating the foreigner as God a bit too far. I mean, nobody is impressed if you run down your own country in front of them. The feeling then is, if this fellow is not going to be able to defend his own country, how is he going to defend me? We don't understand that. I mean, there is nothing wrong with being proud of your country. And this business about Hindu nationalism. The world talks about Christian civilization without blinking an eyelid. What's wrong with the West is a Christian civilization, that's true. The President of the United States every February visits a church breakfast. No one says you shouldn't be doing it. No one else can be on the throne in England unless he belongs to the Anglican Church. No one objects. You can have a Christian Democratic Party in Germany, it's okay. But if you have the BJP here, then it's a Hindu nationalist majoritarian party. For heaven's sake, how? How does it relate to that? It is that narrative which has been created about us. And defensiveness. We have a rich heritage, amongst the richest in the world. Why don't we talk about it? It's good to know your history. It's good to have a heritage. But it's not good to live there. Don't let that be your millstone. It's to remember that, learn from that, and move on. That is what we should be doing. We should be building our own narratives our way. I've given examples of the West primarily because that's where the narratives came from. That's where the whole thing was built throughout the last century and even before. And for the empire, nationalism was evil. And they were prepared to use religion to put down nationalist movements all over Middle East. In Egypt, they would use the Muslim Brotherhood to pull down any nationalist leader. The same fear, I think, haunts them here. That maybe, of course, everyone would like a weak government. And the Western strategy has been, or the American strategy, I would call it specifically, is to make sure that the balance of power in the world is such that no regional power becomes so strong as to endanger American interests in that region. So if we become too powerful and they see it as a threat to Pakistan, then they will try and pull you down. So we have to be friends. We need the United States, but we should remember they are fighting. They are in it for their interest, and we are in for our interest. And you build your narratives and your actions accordingly. I think I've spoken quite a lot, and I'm afraid there can't be much time for dialogue or questions and answers, but maybe I have been able to express adequately the need to have your own story. We must tell our own story, we must tell it now, we tell it straight. No one else is going to do it for you. No one else is going to make you a great power. It's not a gift from anybody. You have to do it yourself. And there is enough talent in the country. There's enough the intelligent class is bright, is smart, is young. We can do it. If you wouldn't just waste time on things like the farmers' agitation, sponsored and promoted by vested interests and politicians. Thank you very much, and best of luck. And thank you, Pawnee Lit Fest, for having me talk to you about narratives and also about my book. My book is the ultimate goal, called The Ultimate Goal, how nations construct their narratives and how I've tried to deconstruct that using Western sources, only Western sources, because that's where the stories came from. Thank you.